in a web browser, go to Google. So I am going to stop sharing this screen. And I'm going to switch out. In the chat, go ahead and tell me, guys, are you guys familiar with Google Forms? Tell me in the chat, yes or no. Are you familiar with Google Forms? Okay, so we kind of have a mixed group from what I can see. So what we've been telling everyone is that you have the option. Well, because you are a Newton County employee, you have access to Google using your Newton County email. So all I did was go to Google. This is just Google. So if it would probably be best if you guys follow along with me. If you're taking notes, that's great. Sometimes the firsthand experience is best. So in a separate tab, go ahead and open up Google. So I am at google.com. I have a personal Google account as well. I actually have several Google accounts. So when I hover over this top right-hand corner, I see that I have my Newton County credentials. So that's how I know that I'm in my work email, my work Google account. I like to change my pictures as well so that I know that this is my work account. It kind of helps keep things separate when I'm looking for things. But the good thing, since Google is free, you can create a personal Google account as well. So we are going to click this app switcher. Some people refer to it as a waffle, but the technical term is app switcher. I like waffles. So today, when you click the app switcher, you get access to all of your Google tools. Today, we're going to scroll down slightly, and we're going to click the one that says Forms. In the event that you do not see Forms in this drop-down list, then you need to scroll and click this button that says More from G Suite Marketplace, and you'll locate it there. Sometimes it doesn't default there if you're not a frequent user of the tool, but for me, I use it all the time, so it's right here for me. So Google Forms is the purple tool. Now, before we dive in, I'm gonna kind of share some ideas for ways that you can use Google Forms. Once I open up my Google Forms tab, you see all of my recent forms down here. And I use it all the time, like I said. For classroom use, whether you are doing surveys with your students, as a classroom teacher, this is how I collected my team. I'm a middle school teacher, and so I worked on a team. And so at the beginning of the school year, as we prepared for open house, this is how we collected our parent information. So if you are like me, maybe your parents were different, but my parents changed their contact information fairly often. And so a lot of times the information that was listed in Infinite Campus was not accurate. So what we did as a team is we created a Google form, and during open house, because you get a high volume of parent participation, to get to this screen, all I did was click the tab, my app switcher, and I selected forms. So during open house, we get a high volume of parents. And so it's very likely that I would get information from my parents in July than waiting till December. So as a team, we created a survey or a form that our parents completed during open house with their student name, addresses, correct phone numbers, correct emails, so that we would have that information to disseminate all of our team information. So that's a very functional use, and we'll talk about some more how we can use Google Forms. Okay. So when you log into Google Forms, you're going to get to a screen that looks like this. You won't have any recent forms if you've never used it before. Okay. But you will have these options at the top. You have a blank start from a new form, and then you have these different options that are templates. Okay. A template is always good because sometimes you're not quite sure what you really want to include in your form. So Google has enabled the option to start from a template. For the purpose of this training, I want to start clean from a blank form because I want to be able to show you each and every option that you can add. So I'm going to click the plus sign. When you click blank form, this is what it's going to look like. You have the option to give your form a title. So I am going to do a PL feedback form. So I want to make sure that I have a title here. And then if you notice up here at the top, it's going to default to untitled form as well. However, if I click that box, it'll capture whatever title that I put at the top of my form. That's just a little trick just so that your form gets a title within your drive for easy location. So the first thing that I've given right here is my title. The next block that you get is form description. If you want to give any directions from your form for your form, if you want a welcome message, anything of that nature, you would put right here. Okay. So then now we're ready to create questions. It's going to default to an untitled question. So I can put, if I want the form to be anonymous, then I don't want to use name, but I can tell me how you feel today. So based on the type of question you type, Google's super smart. Based on what type of question you type, over here on the right-hand side, it's going to try to predict the type of question you want to use. So because this is kind of an open-ended question, it selected paragraph as the type of question, meaning the user will be able to just type their response into this form. So they will just, yes, that's a open-ended, so I'm going to use paragraph. If I were to choose short response, you don't get as many characters in short response. So depending on what you are asking would depend on whether you want to use one of those open-ended, which one of those open-ended responses you want to use. Okay. The other thing I want to show you within the paragraph or short answer. So this is what where they'll type their answer, but then you have some options within each question. This is very important. This little dial that you can switch on or off for each question. If I were to switch this off, the user or the participant in this form will be able to submit the form without completing this question. If every question is essential data that you need, I would make sure that I toggle this switch on. Okay. Your other options, this button here duplicates your question. This button here, if I mess up, will delete your question. The next thing you have on the question is the ellipsis. If you choose ellipsis, it's going to give you the option to show a description. So if you want to provide more information for that, then you would click description here. Okay. Now, moving on to another type of question. If I want to add a question on this pane right here to the right, which one of those buttons do you think I'm going to select? Tell me in the chat. Very good, Lynn. I'm going to click the plus sign to add a question. I could very well just click that duplicate if I had another paragraph question, but I want to show you guys another type of question, which is multiple choice. When using multiple choice, I can type my question here, correct? And then I'm just going to put, so I could choose a yes or no question. And I told you that Google is super smart. So it's trying to anticipate. I said I wanted a multiple choice question. It's anticipating the type of answers that I want. So I can say, yep, I want a yes, and yes, I want a no. I don't have to choose the maybe, or if all the responses are something that I want, then I can just click that add all response there. A sidebar conversation, if you are on a committee within your school and you guys are doing a potluck and you guys have a sign up sheet in a teacher's lounge, or we've been to trainings where before we've trained, there's a faculty meeting and we've had people spend 20 minutes saying, okay, well, I'm going to bring this for this meeting, or I'm going to bring something else. And how much time saver, this would be such a time saver just to send out a form and tell everyone to sign up for something. Okay. So within that, so that's the multiple choice. I can continue to add options down here by clicking add other or add another option. So not add other. I can say, I can type there, and by hitting the enter key gives me another option for my multiple choice. The other thing that I wanted to share, because a lot of times some of our primary friends, they articulate the need for a non-linguistic representation. So in the type of questions in multiple choice, and the other option is checkbox, I'll talk about that in a minute, you have the option to add pictures in your question and pictures in your answer choice. So if my question was, again, how do you feel today? Question mark. And I want to use a picture instead. I can click on this image and it's going to give me some options. I can upload from my device. I can use my camera, photos, etc. But for this, I want to show you guys this option on the far right that says Google image search. Because I want to search images right from Google. So I'm going to say happy emoji. And look at all the happy faces. So I'm going to click the first one, and it's going to be highlighted in blue, and I'm going to say insert. And I get a little thing thinking down here that it's telling me it's loading my image. So that's how I know something's trying to start happening. It says something went wrong, so let's try it again. And there it goes. I'm going to say happy. Same thing for option 2. I'm going to type some words, but then over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to click the add image. Remember, now, like I said, I could upload from my own document. I will use the image search. So I'm going to say sad emoji. I've had some of my early primary grades use this when they are talking about 10 frames. They input pictures of 10 frames that they use within lessons, and then the kids click the correct number. So this right here would be a 10 frame as the question instead of words, and then maybe just numbers for our younger grades. I don't want these other options, so I'm going to click this X to remove them. And so now this is what I have. I made sure I hit required. So now the next question that people ask is, how do I know what it looks like? We're going to scroll up here to the top, and we're going to go over these functions, but just a minute. I want you to see this preview button. When I click the preview button, I am able to see what my form is going to look like to the user. So I was able to add my pictures, and here are my options. When I am ready to leave that mode, all I do is click this pencil that's in the bottom right-hand corner, and now I can go back to edit my form. One question that people often ask is, if I insert a picture for my options, can I make this size different? The answer is no. However, if there were a question in this option, like in the question field, let's see if something pops up. If there were a picture here, I can play with the sizing of that. So if this was too big, if I click the picture, I can drag it and make it smaller. But that's only in the question part. If I insert an image as a question, I can only change the size there. Does that make sense? Yes or no in the chat? I want to make sure I explain that correctly. Okay, good. So there are only 2 types of questions that you can enter pictures for the answer choices. One of those is multiple choice. If I choose a multiple choice question, I'm going to preview this for you. If I choose a multiple choice question, I can only choose one answer. Okay. However, if I go back, I'm going to say leave. If I go back and change this question type, because the good thing is you can change the question type whenever you feel like it. I don't have to be married to multiple choice. I can change this to a checkbox. When I change it to a checkbox and I hit preview, I can choose two answers. So that's the difference between multiple choice and checkboxes. I try to expose my students to questions, to multiple choice questions that have more than one answer. You guys do that? Good. So there's not always just one answer. And especially as we prepare them for, of course, not this year, but in the future, when we're preparing for EOG testing, there are some questions that ask them to choose more than one correct answer. So within Google Forms, right now, this is, and I will talk about the different ways to run a form, but right now, this form is enabling them to choose all that apply. You can have as many, right now, I'll show you guys how to run this as a quote unquote quiz. Right now, we're just doing a survey. So we'll talk about the differences in those different actions. I just wanted you to see adding a picture is very easy in either multiple choice or in checkbox. So let's talk about the other types of questions that are located under the plus sign. Remember, when I want to add a question, I click the plus sign and it's right here. And so I've talked about short and paragraph. So those are open-ended questions, multiple choice, and drop down. The drop down option, it's just like what it says. It's going to capture your questions in a drop down. So let's say feelings in the interest of time, and I can say sad. I can hit enter and say mad. I can say happy. And now I'm going to hit preview so you can see the difference in what a drop down question. So here was my question, and it's asking them to choose. And now the answers are in a drop down instead of being in multiple choice. So just depending on what you're trying to ask will depend on how you want to, what type of question you want to provide. I'm going to add another question, and we've talked about these select. So these, they have it packaged by extended responses, selected responses. This next one is a very interesting option as well, a file upload. The user can upload files from their Google Drive as a response. So for example, if you are wanting someone to upload artifacts as their response to something, a place where you can hold all of those artifacts in one place, then adding an upload would be a great option. So this is telling you, it says files will be uploaded to the form owner's Google Drive. So I am the owner of this form. So when I send this out, the user's documents will be uploaded to my Google Drive. Respondents will be required to sign into Google. And so make sure you only share this form with people you trust. They're just giving you a disclosure, and then I say continue. So for this, if I am a department chair in my building and I'm an instructional coach and I want my team to upload their PLC minutes or their PLC sign-in sheet, I would do this. I am horrible with paper. I lose it. It gets crumpled. I spill my coffee on it. So this would be a great way to capture those things digitally. I could say PLC minutes, and I say I want it uploaded as a file. And then the next question says only allow specific types of files. You can hover over that. And what kind of file is it going to be? Well, my teachers may be uploading a document. They may be uploading a PDF, and they may have scanned their minutes as a as a picture. So I'm going to use the image. You can upload files in either one file, 5, or 10. So hopefully you wouldn't need any more than 10, but in the event that you do, then I would just create another question that requires a file upload. So that tells you the maximum. Then it tells you the maximum file size. I'm not a guru of knowing the difference in sizing. So anyone who plays around with it, let me know. I haven't run into any errors, so I just picked the highest one. Okay. And then that's it. So let's look at what this looks like from the preview portion. When I click preview, it says PLC minutes. When I click add file, it asks me to locate the file that I'm trying to submit. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about the file upload option? So I'm trying to show you just the different options, because depending on, there are number of ways that you could use this. I just want to show you, and remember, those files will then go to the users, to the owner of the form, their Google Drive. I'll show you that in a minute, but that's where those documents will go. So let's go back to edit. I'm going to click my plus sign again, just so that we can go over all these different questions. The other types of questions are linear scale, multiple choice grid, checkbox, date, or time. Okay. I want to show you an example of a form that I have completed. So hopefully this isn't your first session and this form looks familiar. This is the survey that we've sent out for our virtual Power Hour sessions. So the first question is a checkbox question, and I've listed all the schools for the user to select their school. And the next one, when I click it, it tells you it's a multiple choice question. I ask for the role. So there we've already used a different combinations. Now this example is example of a Likert scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? So this is an example of what that would look like. You just enter an example on the low end and the high end. I could have put other options for it and numbered and labeled each number, but I did not see the need to do that. And then this is an example of, I'll go back. That question is an example of the multiple choice grid. Okay, so I wanted to know several questions, like how they felt, strongly agree, disagree, or whatnot. So that's why I added them in a field like that. And then last but not least was an extended response. So those are all the types of questions that you could submit. A date, I don't use that one very often, and I don't use time very often, but you may find a need for that. So those are all the types of questions. Now, the next button directly under that is importing questions. I have not used this very often, but what it does is it allows you to import questions from other forms. So here are all the forms that I've created and different trainings or different things that have been shared with me. I could click I could click a form that I've used in the past and I select it, and then it's going to bring up all the questions in that form. So instead of having to type all my 23 schools again, I'm going to click this checkbox. I'm going to click the button that says import questions, and now that question has been imported into my form. What do you guys think about that? So that is if you use for my team, we always want to know what schools are present. So we always have to have the schools within our forms. So instead of typing them afresh every single time, I could just import them from a form. Definitely saves time. Okay. I wanted to make sure I showed you guys that about importing questions. The next button that is directly below that is called title and description. If you want to, when I hit that plus sign, it's going to add a title. Which isn't much different from just adding that at the top of your question, but I want you guys to see what it looks like. So do you see how I put choose a school? It's not a question, it's just another bar within the form. It doesn't do anything. Sometimes it's just good to help break up the form if you want to provide just some, for it to be visually appealing, but I just wanted to make sure you knew what the function of that button was. The next button is an image button. This, you can add an image to your form and it'll look just like the same kind of way we did with the happy face. If you want a form to, a picture to appear in the form, not as a question, but just as a feel good. And so I can shrink that as well if I want a picture at the top of my form. If I click the picture and click the ellipsis that appears to the left, I can center that picture so that it appears in the middle. The next option is to add a video to your form. When I click add a video, it's going to open up a YouTube search or a URL. So if this is something I want my students to watch a YouTube video and then give me feedback within the form, this keeps everything in one place. The other option is to paste the YouTube URL that you already know, like you've already searched it in another tab. And then the last but not least button is the section. Sometimes if you've ever completed a form and it gives you, there are different sections or layers. If I click this button, now I've broken my form up into section 1 and section 2. So I can add that section, or I can take this question, I can title the section, and I can just separate things so that they're not all in one section of the form. I can very easily change the order of my questions by hovering over the question at the top center and getting the 4 cross arrow, and then I can drag and drop the order of my questions. Okay. So I want to show you what the section looks like. When I add a section, it's going to give me a next option. So there's information, questions to answer, and because I created another section, the user has to click next. And so there's my next section. I'm going to go back to edit so we can move on. We have now explored all the ways to add content to your form. Super, super, super easy. The next thing that people almost always want to know is, well, Ijeoma, what if I don't want it to be purple? Well, good luck. You are in luck. You hover over this little painter's palette, you have the option to customize your themes. By clicking there, you can add a picture that will appear in the header. You can choose from the ones that are pre-selected or pre-generated. I like jelly beans. Let's click that one. I can insert that. And now it's going to appear at the top. Based on whatever picture you choose, they give you some a color palette that they think goes best, or you can always add your own color. The next option, I'll click cancel there. The next option is for our background color. And then the last option is your font. You only have 4 fonts to choose from. I like to stay either with basic, formal, or playful. The decorative is a little difficult to read. So those are my 2 options, or those are my options for text. Once I am happy with the text, I just click the X, and now my theme is a little different. We've already talked about the functions of the preview button. That allows you to see what your form looks like. When you want to edit again, go back to edit. I just click that pencil, and now I'm back in edit mode. So now here is where, when you want to change the settings of your form, we're going to go to this gear. This is where all the magic happens. You've done all this great work to create a form for your user, and now you want to make sure that everything is doing what you want it to do. So you will go to this gear that says settings. So there are 3 tabs within the settings. You have your general, your presentation, and your quizzes. I'm going to explain this, and I'll give you my feedback from 2 different ways. If I were using this form in class with a set group as a teacher or within a building, I may restrict this to users of just Newton County and our domain. Okay. But in the times that we are in now, where some students are not logging into your courses with their Newton County credentials, they may just be using their parents' phone. There's all these other circumstances. I would use this option that says, I would uncheck that. By unchecking that, that means that anyone with the link that you're going to share will have access to your form. That is very, very, very important. I mistakenly skipped over the first option that says collect email addresses. If you want to have the email addresses of the users of your form, then you would want to collect their email addresses. If you want them to get a response receipt for completing the form, then you would check that box as well. Have you ever sent something to someone and they say, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get my response? If you say response receipts, it's going to say if respondent requested or always. Do you want them to always get the receipt, or do you want them to request it? And they have an option to request it at the end of the form. Those choices are up to you, but this will eliminate people asking you, did you get my form? I clicked it. Did you give it back? Did you get it? That can get a little annoying after a while, right? So those are your options for that. The other option that you have under require sign-in, if you were to restrict this to Newton County users, you can limit to 1 response. I used this in my class when we were voting on a place or voting on the name of our class name. I let the students vote on our class, our team name, but I only wanted 1 response per email. So if you want to limit it to where only 1 person can respond per email, then you would check this, limit 1 response. Remember, if you do that though, it's going to require them to log in either with their Newton County credentials or with a Google email. So just be a little, know your audience. If I'm sending this to my parents, I want to eliminate all barriers. So guess what? I just want you to complete the form. I'm not going to have any requirements in sign in. You have to think about what your options are and what you're trying to obtain, what your goal is. Within our organization, if I were just sending something in our team, like within our network, within our technology team, maybe I do want to limit 1 response and I want them to use their Newton County credentials just so that I'm sure that only certain people are completing it. It just depends on what you want. There's no right or wrong. It's only wrong if the people that you need to complete it are unable to get to it. So if you send out a form and people are saying they can't get to it, it is more than likely because this box restrict to Newton County schools is checked. So I'm going to uncheck that. The next option says respondents can. Do you want your respondents to edit your form after they complete it? Probably not. I can't think of a reason yet as to why I would want them to, so I leave this unchecked. The other option is they can see a chart or summary of the responses. This may be good if you want your kids to see how other people responded, but I typically do not check this as either. I leave both of those blank. So those are our options under the general settings. The middle tab is for our presentation settings. Under your presentation settings, you have 3 boxes. You have show a progress bar. I like that one. Especially, sometimes it just feels good knowing how much more you have left, especially if you've broken your form up into sections. The user wants to know how long it's going to take. Like, for example, when we did our Safe Schools, it was a little more reassuring to see that progress bar, knowing, okay, I'm 50% done with this module. It made you feel better. So I use that option. If this were an assessment, and I'll show you how you can turn your form into a quiz, I may want to shuffle my question order if I want to make sure that if we're in close proximity, if my students are in close proximity and I don't want them to look on each other's screens as they move through the test. But for this, I'm not going to check it. And the last one says show to submit another response. What that means is that a link will appear for the students to allow someone else to use that device. So I use this when my kids are voting and I maybe only have access to 4 devices. I don't want to wait for the kid to log in, upload their credentials. I'm just going to pass the device, the iPad around. So I want the link to show for another response, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then the last is a confirmation message. This is very important, guys. If you want a message to appear when your respondent submits their form, then you can type your own personal message. You can say, thank you, or thank you so much. You will hear from me soon. You can add contact information. You can add next step information, whatever you want your confirmation message to be, put that right here. That is very user friendly for the person that's completing the form. And then the very last tab is the quizzes tab. If you want to make this form a quiz, if this is an assessment type of form, then you would, right now, it automatically toggles it off. So right now, there weren't correct answers. This was just a survey because that's what I was creating. In the event your form is really going to serve as a quiz, then this is the tab that you have to make some adjustments to. So I would click the quizzes tab and I would toggle this button to say, make this a quiz. And if you notice, when I did that, all of those things that were grayed out, now they're live for me to change. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, do you want this locked mode on Chromebooks? Now here's my feedback again. In the times that we are in now, I would not use this mode because it tells you that your students have to be on, must take this quiz on a managed Chromebook, meaning the Chromebooks that we issue within our district. And a lot of our kids don't have those. The majority of our kids don't have those at the moment. So I would not use this mode in our times that we are in right now. However, if I were in my classroom, I would turn this lock mode off. Listen to me, guys. This is some good stuff. You ready? If I turn this mode on while students are sitting with me in the classroom, this does not allow them. It makes their quiz go full screen. So they won't have access to other tabs while they're taking my assessment. This is really cool because if they try to open another tab, it will submit their quiz as is. So you can't try to pull up Google while you're taking my assessment, trying to, get a little assistance. So I would use that in my classroom while my kids were taking an assessment. Now, I wouldn't do that now. Hear me, hear me, hear me. And I can't even show you this option live because I need other tabs and it won't allow me to do that. But hear me now, if you use this option, you're going to get a lot of friends telling you that they can't access your quiz. So don't do that right now. Save that for the fall when your friends are in the classroom with you. But I would also show your kids what happens if they try to go to another screen. They need to trust and believe that it won't work. Okay, so let's turn that off for now. My other option, it says release grade. Remember, I told you guys I'm a former middle school person, and as soon as my kids turn in a paper assignment, they ask me what their grade is. I don't know, you just gave it to me. But guess what? If I were to use Google Forms, I could release their grade immediately after each submission. So their grade on the assessment would come up as soon as they submit it. Or I could choose the option that says later, after manual review. So then if I click that one, it turns on email collection so that you can manually review. In what world or for what reason do you think a manual review would be necessary for an assessment? Talk to me. Let me see if you're on your toes. Manual review. Why would we want to, as a teacher, manually review the responses? Very good. Yeah, y'all got it. For constructed or open-ended questions. So Google is not that smart. It's not that smart that it's going to know what if your students' open-ended responses are correct. But if you choose this one, this allows you time to go through and manually give the appropriate points or give them credit for a question. And then it says that you have to turns on the email collection so that once you give them credit for that question, it'll then release the grade to the student. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Very good. So very, very last option is respondents can see. You have three options. Do you want your respondents to see their missed question? Do you want them to see the correct answer and point value? I would not allow them to see the correct answer, but I would allow them to see their missed question. In my mind, I want them to see what they got incorrect, but if I'm going to use this same assessment again as a retest, then I don't want to just give them the correct answers. And so if you ever have questions, if you hover over the little question mark, it reinforces and gives you a little bit of more explanation as to what that option does. Okay, so those are just some other feedback options for you. You can choose not to show them anything, but I think it's good for them to see the point value, especially if you're not making every question weigh the same and the questions that they missed. So once I'm done, I'm going to click save. And so now that this is saved, and I saved it as a quiz, what you'll notice is now there's a button at the top that's telling me total points because I saved this as a quiz. And so for each question, I have to go in now that this is a quiz and not a survey. I'm trying to show you two things at once. I hope I'm not confusing you. But since this is a quiz, I have to go through and award points. So I have to tell Google which one of these is the correct answer. So I have to make sure I select the right answer, and I have to give the question points. You could add feedback to each question if you want, and then that would appear on the student. So right now, for this question, I have this option as being the correct answer. And see how now that one is not. So you can definitely make changes to that if you want to change the answer key. Now I want option 2 to be the correct answer, or select multiple correct answers. I just click done, and now that's showing me that it's the correct answer. You cannot run a form as a quiz unless you've come in the settings and enabled that portion. Hope everyone understands that. You can't run a form as a quiz if you have not enabled that function, and you have to make sure you go through and select an answer key. Okay, so those are those functions. And so I want to show you what, again, now that it looks like a quiz, the difference. Even though I didn't change everything. So for that one, you see how it tells the kid, because I checked that it's worth 6 points. I'll come out. So now we have the only things we have left to cover are how to share this quiz or this survey, depending on what it was, and how you get your responses. So we've talked about these options. Now this big button that says send is how you would send that to your students. So it's telling me about the lockdown Chromebooks. I didn't enable that one. So under send, you have options. I could type email addresses right here. Unless I'm just sending it to Dr. Williams and Dr. Hutchinson, I very rarely use the email. As a teacher, I would share a link. So I would use the middle option that enables link. I always click this shorten URL because I just want it to be shorter, and then I can copy that link and I can either email it to my students directly in our email group, or I can post it on my Canvas page, which is more than likely what I would do. The other option is to get an embed, but because I have a file upload question, you can't embed a file upload question. So that's what that error is telling me. So those are our different ways to send. If I am under the very first option that says email, you have the option to collaborate on a form. Me and my team members do this all of the time. We work on a form together. So if I click add collaborators, what I'm doing is giving other people access to edit my form. If you work on a grade level in the same subject matter, this is very helpful because you want your teammates to not only have access to help you create the form, but you want them also to have the responses. Remember at the beginning, I told you that I used this form during open house with my teammates. I added each of my teammates' email here so that so if I start to type Williams.Jennifer, I can add her to it. And now she has access to this form that I'm sure she's going to delete. She has access to this form and any of the information that is collected from it. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, good. Y'all are still there. Very good. So I want to show you right now, I haven't sent this form to anyone, but I have sent my survey form to everyone. So remember, this is the form that has gone out to you guys, the survey. I'll click preview so you can see what it looks like. That's what it looks like, preview. But the next question that you guys should be saying, okay, I've sent the form. Now is how do I see the responses? Don't you worry your pretty head. This tab next to questions, once you get responses, turns into responses. When I click that, I am able to see the data from every single question. How cool is that? This is empowering because depending on what type of questions you ask, you'll be able to look at your data and have an objective. You're talking real stuff. It's not, you know what, team, I think we did a really good job with the power hour sessions. No, you can really see that people started our training. It says, how would you rate your understanding prior to your training? So we had a lot of level 1s and 2s. Look at what happened after the session. We had more people on this side of the curve after the session. So we don't have to think that we did a good job. We can say, no, we provided training that participants were able to leave with a better understanding. When you use those questions that are Likert scale, like the ones, do you disagree, strongly disagree? You see how that data looks? So you get a different breakdown. So the bars look a little bit different. For me, when you're looking at your data from these are open-ended questions, these last two. So the data is a little bit more difficult to comb through because they are individual responses. So, but we still can. Now, this is all well and good. So that looks good. Now, the other things that I want you have other options under the response tab. I can send this information to an Excel sheet by clicking this button. That is what I would do as a classroom teacher or an instructional coach, or my team will probably do this at the end of our power hour sessions. It makes it easier to comb through data just so that I can read these open-ended responses. Okay, so when I go through, when I send the information to a sheet, if I were an instructional coach and I had my teachers sign up for times that they wanted me to come see them, I would then import that data to this sheet. And then I want to keep track of who I've seen. So I could say, oh, I went to Ms. Johnson's class today, and I'm going to highlight her yellow so I know I went to her. This Excel sheet now becomes saved in your Excel under your Google Drive in Excel. Now you have this document is going to be updated in real time. So that is under responses. The other thing that is important is if this were another document, let's just say I don't want everyone to have access to complete this survey forever and ever. If I toggle this button off, it says not accepting responses. So even if I've shared that link to people, if I toggle this button off, then you will not be able to complete the form. So I like that because I don't want to have to delete my form. I'm just turning it off where I'm not accepting responses. And then last but not least, under responses is this ellipsis. I like this. We have our, whenever we send something out where people have to sign up for something, I click that I want to get an email notification for new responses. You may not want to get, I don't have this turned on right now because we sent this to the whole district. So I don't want to get an email every time we get a new response. But there are some times where you may want to know that, so you can click that option. The other option, select response destination. I can send them by clicking that. I'm frozen. My cursor's frozen, guys. Thinking too hard. Oh, sorry. So if I click select response destination, I can send those responses to the Excel sheet that I've created, or I can send them to another existing Excel sheet. So it's just another way to condense your data. And then the other last options, I can unlink a form from a spreadsheet. I can download the responses. I don't want to print all of these responses, or I can delete all the responses. So what I do is I make a copy of a form and I just delete. If it's a form I want to use again, I make a copy of it and I delete the responses. That way it's basically a brand new form. We've talked about customizing a theme. We've talked about how to preview your content, how to change a regular survey into a quiz or an assessment. So we talked about all of our features at the top. And we've also talked about how to retrieve your responses. And so I hope that this was useful. The last thing I want to make sure you know is what I just talked about. You have an undo button, so you can't break anything. You can make a copy of the entire form. You can throw it away, and so on, adding collaborators. In this session, we don't have time to talk about the various add-ons that you can add to a form, but those are a game changer. Dr. Williams has dropped a link into the Google EDU platform where you can learn more about this product and other Google products. But guys, if you don't use this for anything else, I'm going to tell you the game changer. Open House. Please do not. I'm a parent, and now I'm going to have 2 elementary kids, and I have to write my baby's name on so many pieces of paper, and that's the dreadful part of open house in my mind. I love meeting all of my new teacher friends for my babies, but I hate writing my name so many times. Have your parents complete a Google form. You will know a whole lot more quickly instead of having to beg people for those little half sheets. If at any, you can also take the link to your form and copy this link and make it a QR code. Like, there's so many ways you can kind of bypass having to use pen and paper. I love pen and paper for certain things, but in other ways, I'm always for trying to find a digital solution. So I hope you guys enjoyed the session. I am going to share the link for our survey. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope you all enjoyed today's session. I hope you learned something that you can put into practice. Fairly easy. Google is an easy tool. You just got to play with it. Dr. Williams tells everybody at the end of each session, don't just close your laptop. Stay on it a little while and play around and try to put what you learned into practice now while it's still fresh on your brain. We truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys for joining us this afternoon. Remember our YouTube page playlist we'll have information for you as far as the recordings of these links. Give us to the end of the week so that we can post today's links. And we appreciate you guys for joining us. Thank you guys. Have a great afternoon. Bye. Y'all were awesome. A great audience. Wonderful. Bravo. It is great.